She walked into the store with just $10 left, hoping to buy milk for her baby. But when she saw an old woman struggling to pay for her medicine, she made a choice that would change both their lives forever. The city was already half asleep when Chloe pushed the squeaky stroller down the cracked pavement. The December wind bit through her thin jacket, turning her breath into small clouds of silver mist. Street lights flickered like tired eyes as she passed under them, one hand holding the stroller, the other clutching her purse, a purse that held her last $10. Inside the stroller, baby Elijah was wrapped in a faded blue blanket, his tiny fists occasionally twitching as he dreamed. His mother looked at him with a mixture of exhaustion and fierce devotion. She hadn't eaten properly in 2 days, but the baby's formula was running out, and that mattered more than anything. The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour grocery store stung her eyes when she stepped inside. It smelled of oranges and detergent, a smell she had come to associate with small mercies. Chloe made her way straight to aisle 6, where the baby formula was locked behind glass. She stared at the price tag, $9.79. Her heart ached at the precision of it. That was nearly everything she had left. Behind her, a few people milled about, a tired cashier scanning items with the rhythm of a metronome, a janitor mopping the floor, a young man stacking cereal boxes, and an older woman standing at the pharmacy counter arguing softly about a prescription. The woman's voice cracked, brittle as tissue paper. "Are you sure it's $8 more? I thought my insurance." The pharmacist shrugged helplessly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Without full coverage, it's $28. Chloe hesitated, gripping the can of formula. She heard Elijah stir, his small cry piercing the silence around her like a blade. The sound tore through her, echoing the same hunger she felt inside. The old woman's hands trembled as she counted out coins. "I'll come back next week, I suppose," she whispered. And that was when Chloe did it. Before her mind could catch up to her heart, she stepped forward. "Here," she said softly, reaching into her purse. She pressed the $10 bill onto the counter. "Please, take it." The woman blinked at her. "Oh, no, child, you can't. It's fine. Just take it." The old woman's eyes filled with tears as the pharmacist rang up the medicine. Chloe smiled faintly, but the corners of her lips trembled. She turned away quickly so no one would see the sting in her own eyes. She placed the can of formula back on the shelf, her reflection ghost-like in the glass case. Elijah whimpered again, and she whispered to him, "It's okay, baby. Mama's got you. Just one more day, okay?" From behind a rack of canned soup, a pair of eyes watched her carefully, eyes belonging to a tall man in a store apron wearing a name tag that said Derek, intern. He looked out of place, too refined in posture and voice for such a job. His watch alone could have paid for every item in the store, but no one noticed. No one ever did. Derek Thompson, though no one here knew that name, had been working undercover for months, pretending to be an intern to observe how his company's retail chain operated on the ground level. His billion-dollar conglomerate owned half the logistics systems that kept food and medicine flowing across the state. Yet what he was really studying tonight wasn't supply chains or efficiency reports. He was studying people. And Chloe had just become the most important data point of his life. He watched her walk toward the exit, pushing the stroller with one hand and wiping her cheek with the other. When the door's bell chimed, Derek took a deep breath. Something about that moment, the uncalculated grace of what she'd done, lodged itself in his chest like a quiet truth he couldn't ignore. He stepped toward the cashier. "That woman who just left, the one with the stroller," he said calmly. "What did she buy?" The cashier looked puzzled. "She didn't. She gave her money to help that old lady." Derek nodded slowly. "Keep her total open. I'll take care of it." He grabbed the formula, a small pack of diapers, and a bottle of vitamin drops from the shelf. Then he left the store, moving fast. Outside, Chloe was halfway down the block, the stroller wheels bumping over the sidewalk cracks. Derek called out, "Miss, wait!" She turned, startled. He slowed his pace, holding up a plastic bag. "You forgot these," he said. She frowned. I didn't buy those." "I know," he replied. "Consider it a refund for kindness rendered." She stared at him, unsure whether to trust this stranger with a clean smile and calloused hands. "Who are you?" she asked. He hesitated. "Just a man who believes good hearts deserve a little help." Her lips parted, words lost somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. As he handed her the bag, a gust of wind blew through, scattering dry leaves across the sidewalk. Elijah stirred again, cooing softly as she pulled the blanket tighter around him. "Thank you," she finally whispered. Derek smiled, but his eyes seemed to hold a secret. "Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. "Something tells me this isn't the last time we'll meet." Chloe didn't sleep much that night. The heater in her small apartment had stopped working 2 weeks ago, and the silence between the cracks of the walls was filled with the soft hum of the city below. She sat by the window, watching headlights drift by like restless ghosts, Elijah cradled against her chest. The baby's breathing soothed her, slow, warm, rhythmic. She remembered her own mother singing to her in the same way years ago, before life started stripping things away. Her parents, her education, her safety net, her dreams of becoming a nurse. She had dropped out of college after her second year when she got pregnant. Elijah's father, a man who once promised to stand by her forever, had vanished 3 weeks before the birth. Since then, it had been Chloe against the world, and lately, the world wasn't playing fair. Her job at the diner barely covered rent. Some nights she brought home leftover pancakes for dinner. But despite everything, Chloe held on to her small rituals, wiping down the kitchen counter, reading to Elijah from a torn children's book, and whispering prayers to no one in particular before bed. She hadn't told anyone about the $10 incident. It wasn't the kind of story you bragged about. But she couldn't stop thinking about the stranger, the tall man with calm eyes who'd chased her down just to hand her baby formula. There had been something dignified about him, something that didn't fit the fluorescent world of grocery aisles. Across town, in a penthouse overlooking the skyline, Derek Thompson stood by his window, the city reflected in the glass like a sea of liquid gold. He had shed the store apron hours ago, traded for a tailored charcoal suit, but the night's events still clung to him. He couldn't stop thinking about that woman, Chloe. For 10 years, he had built Thompson Enterprises into one of the most powerful logistics corporations in the country. He had grown up in poverty himself, son of a janitor and a seamstress, but had clawed his way out through scholarships, long nights, and a near-obsessive belief in hard work. Somewhere along the line, though, his company had become a machine, efficient, profitable, but cold. He had told himself that running it like an empire meant helping more people indirectly, that success justified distance, but lately he had begun to doubt that. Going undercover as an intern in one of his own stores had started as a PR experiment. "Understand the ground," his board had said. "See what your employees see." He hadn't expected to actually feel something there. Yet the image of Chloe placing her last $10 on that counter had stirred something raw in him, a memory of his mother pawning her wedding ring to buy his textbooks. That moment had made him who he was, and tonight he'd seen it replayed in another woman's trembling hands. The next morning, Chloe woke to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was her landlord again. Rent overdue. She sighed, pulling the blanket tighter around Elijah. She had $23 left in her account now, thanks to the stranger's gift. Enough for bus fare and a few groceries maybe. When she stepped outside, snowflakes were beginning to fall, thin, lazy ones that melted the moment they touched her coat. She headed toward the diner, nodding to the other women waiting for the morning bus. Single mothers, night shift nurses, cleaners with tired eyes and strong hands. At the diner, the coffee machine hissed like a restless dragon. Her coworker Tanya, a sharp-tongued woman in her 40s, raised an eyebrow. "Girl, you look like you wrestled a snowstorm and lost." Chloe chuckled weakly. "Feels about right." Tanya poured her a coffee. "You still working doubles?" "Yeah, need the extra tips." By noon, the lunch rush had turned the place into a blur of plates and chatter. Chloe balanced trays, wiped counters, smiled until her cheeks hurt. But somewhere between orders, she froze. Because sitting in booth 7 was the same man from last night. No apron this time, no name tag, just a sleek black coat, a watch that gleamed like liquid mercury, and the same calm eyes. She blinked. "You?" He smiled faintly. "Told you we'd meet again." Tanya leaned close and whispered, "Girl, you know him?" Chloe shook her head slowly. "Not really." Mr. Thompson gestured toward the seat across from him. "When you get a break, sit with me for a moment. I have a question." Her shift lead nodded. Customers like him weren't the kind you refused. When Chloe finally approached, wiping her hands nervously on her apron, she hesitated before sitting down. "Is this about last night?" she asked softly. "In a way," he said. "You helped someone without hesitation, even when it cost you. That's rare. And frankly, it's the kind of heart I wish more people had in my company." "Your company?" He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a black business card embossed with gold letters. Thompson Enterprises. CEO, Derek Thompson. Chloe's breath caught. The name was familiar. His company logo was on nearly every delivery truck in the city. He said quickly, "I'm not here to scare you. I just believe that people like you, people who give without expecting anything, belong somewhere better. I want to offer you a position, logistics assistant. Decent pay, benefits, childcare. You'd start next week." Chloe stared at him, stunned. "Why me?" Derek smiled gently. "Because character is worth more than any resume. And you've already proven yours." The following Monday morning felt like stepping into a dream Chloe hadn't dared to have. The glass doors of Thompson Enterprises loomed before her, tall and gleaming, catching the early sunlight like a cathedral of ambition. Inside, people moved briskly, with lanyards swinging from their necks, coffee cups in hand, voices low but confident. Chloe's hands trembled slightly as she pushed Elijah's stroller toward the reception desk. She was wearing her best outfit, a plain white blouse, the same one she'd worn to every job interview that never called back. It was clean but faded at the cuffs. Her hair was tied back neatly, her eyes lined with cautious hope. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect curls and an even more perfect smile, greeted her warmly. "You must be Miss Carter. Mr. Thompson expecting you. He's, very punctual." Chloe laughed nervously. "I'll try not to ruin his streak." A few minutes later, she was escorted up 31 floors to a corridor lined with abstract art and soft jazz echoing faintly through hidden speakers. She felt small in that world of polished shoes and glass offices, but she also felt something else, a kind of quiet determination. When the elevator doors opened, Mr. Thompson was already waiting. No longer the mysterious stranger from the grocery store, he looked every bit the CEO now. Immaculate suit, composed expression, a presence that filled the hallway without effort. Yet when he saw her, his face softened. "Miss Carter," he said, extending a hand, "I'm glad you came." "Thank you for giving me this chance," she said, shaking his hand lightly.
I've never worked anywhere like this." "You'll do fine," he assured her. "Kindness translates into everything, even logistics." Her first day was overwhelming. The logistics floor was a hive of movement, phones ringing, keyboards clattering, people arguing gently about shipment delays and supply routes. She was placed under a supervisor named Marcus, a patient man in his 50s who wore suspenders and kept peppermints in his drawer for nervous newcomers. "Paperwork can wait," he told her with a wink. "The real work is understanding how things move, not just boxes, but people." Chloe learned quickly. She asked questions, stayed late, and helped wherever she could. The other employees liked her immediately. Her warmth disarmed the usual office coldness. Even when she spilled coffee on a shipment log, she laughed first, making everyone else laugh too. But there were moments, when she looked out at the skyline through the tall windows, that she still doubted herself. What if this was all temporary? What if she woke up tomorrow and it had all been a mistake? Each afternoon, during his rounds, Mr. Thompson would stop by her desk. At first it was brief, a polite greeting, a word of encouragement. But soon their conversations stretched longer. They talked about the city, about how small choices ripple through lives, about his mother's recipes and her son's favorite lullabies. One day, she asked him, "Why do you still come down here? Don't CEOs spend most of their time in meetings?" He smiled, leaning against her desk. "Meetings don't teach me anything new. People do." She looked up from her computer. "Is that why you were working undercover that night?" He hesitated. "Yes, but I didn't expect to meet anyone like you." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the buzz of the office seemed to fade. There was no romance in that silence, not yet, but there was recognition. Two lives that had survived hardship, both searching for meaning beyond success or survival. Weeks passed. Chloe grew into her role with quiet confidence. She organized routes more efficiently than some of the older staff. Her empathy translated into foresight. She noticed when drivers were tired, when assistants were stressed, and always found gentle ways to help. Marcus would sometimes joke, "If I didn't know better, I'd say the CEO hired an angel." But not everyone shared the sentiment. One of the senior analysts, a sharp woman named Lauren, seemed to bristle at Chloe's rapid rise. "Funny how people just walk in and start shining," she muttered one afternoon, not quite under her breath. Chloe heard it. She smiled politely. "I just try to do my best." "Sure," Lauren replied, tapping her pen. "Must be nice having the boss's attention." That night, Chloe went home troubled. The apartment was still drafty, Elijah was still teething, and now she had to fight a different kind of storm, the subtle, invisible kind that brewed in offices and whispers. When she came in the next morning, she found a note on her desk in Mr. Thompson's handwriting. "For every storm, remember, kindness is your anchor. D.T." She stared at it for a long time, the paper trembling slightly in her fingers. Later that week, the company announced a charity initiative, a community fund for struggling single parents. Mr. Thompson named it the Chloe Carter Fund. The announcement sent murmurs rippling through the staff, and Chloe's knees nearly gave out when she saw her name on the presentation slide. Reporters were invited, cameras flashed, but when she stood beside Mr. Thompson on the stage, she didn't see the lights or the crowd. She only saw the man who had once handed her a bag of formula under the city's cold moonlight, and the strange way fate had turned a small act of kindness into something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. That evening, after the event, they found themselves alone in the conference hall, the city lights painting silver patterns on the floor. Chloe turned to him. "Why did you name it after me?" He looked at her, his voice low and steady. "Because I reminded you what wealth is supposed to mean." She didn't answer. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a charity case, not as an employee, but as a human being whose goodness had changed something real. And in that quiet moment, two very different lives found common ground, not through fortune, but through grace.
The applause from the charity event still echoed in Chloe's ears long after the hall had emptied. That night, when she finally reached home, she placed Elijah gently in his crib and sat at the kitchen table in silence. Her name on a foundation. It felt unreal. She'd spent her whole life being invisible, and suddenly she was a symbol. But visibility comes with shadows. 2 days later, in a boardroom of cold marble and polished steel, Derek Thompson stood before 12 men and women whose smiles were as sharp as their suits. One of them, a gray-haired executive named Crawford, leaned forward, voice smooth as oil. With respect, Derek, naming a corporate charity after a junior employee, an untrained one no less, seems impulsive. Optics matter. Derek folded his hands calmly. So do intentions. Lauren, the senior analyst who had once side-eyed Chloe, spoke next. We've all heard the story, Derek. She's a sweet woman, no doubt, but the media's calling her your miracle employee. There's gossip circulating that your interest in her is more than professional. The room hummed with polite discomfort. Derek's gaze hardened, the CEO in him taking over. If kindness has become scandalous, then perhaps this company has forgotten its values. We built Thompson Enterprises to serve people, not to please rumors. The words cut through the tension like glass. But when the meeting ended, Derek stayed behind, staring out at the skyline. Even he couldn't deny it. Whispers had power, and he worried that Chloe might soon feel their weight. The next morning, Chloe arrived to find the office atmosphere different. Colleagues who once smiled now looked away too quickly. Coffee break chatter silenced when she walked by. Marcus tried to reassure her. Don't mind them. People talk when they don't understand goodness. Still, it stung. She hadn't asked for attention, hadn't asked to be anyone's symbol. All she'd wanted was to earn a living, feed her son, and maybe, just maybe, be treated like she belonged somewhere. By lunchtime, she found herself in the break room, alone, scrolling through her phone. An online news article caught her eye. From poverty to power, the woman behind the CEO's heartwarming move. Her stomach sank. The comments below were cruel. Strangers turning her story into gossip, speculation, and worse. She locked her phone and whispered to herself, "This isn't what I wanted." That afternoon, Derek called her into his office. He could tell from her face that she had seen the article. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I never meant for the spotlight to find you. I just wanted people to see what goodness can do." She shook her head. "You've already done too much for me, Mr. Thompson. Maybe I should just step back, let the story fade." His jaw tightened. "If you step back now, you're letting their noise define your worth. You didn't do anything wrong, Chloe." "I didn't do anything at all," she whispered. "You did." He looked at her for a long moment, then said almost gently, "You gave your last $10 to a stranger. I only gave you an opportunity. Don't confuse the order of miracles." For the first time, she smiled through the tears. "You talk like a preacher." He chuckled softly. "Only when I'm trying to save souls from boardrooms." Later that week, Derek invited her to accompany him to a community warehouse, one of the new hubs funded by the Chloe Carter Fund. The warehouse employed single parents, offering flexible shifts and childcare on site. When Chloe arrived, she was greeted by rows of workers smiling, some with toddlers clinging to their legs. One of the mothers approached her, eyes bright with gratitude. "You're her, aren't you? The lady from the article?" Chloe blushed. "I guess I am." The woman took her hand. "You don't know what this place means to us." As Chloe looked around, at the laughter, at the small daycare corner filled with toys, at the hope in tired eyes, she finally understood. It wasn't about her name or reputation. It was about this. goodness multiplying. Derek was standing nearby, watching her quietly. In that moment, he saw in her something that boardrooms could never measure, the kind of influence that didn't need titles. But not everyone celebrated. That same night, Lauren met privately with Crawford in his office. Her tone was sharp, laced with envy. "He's losing focus. This girl's become his weakness." Crawford nodded. "Then perhaps it's time we remind him what power costs." He slid a file across the desk, an investigation into Chloe's background. Unpaid rent notices, a hospital debt, a college withdrawal record. We leak this to the press, and she becomes a liability. He'll have no choice but to distance himself. Lauren hesitated. "You'd ruin her life for that?" Crawford smiled thinly. "Business isn't about lives, it's about leverage." 2 days later, the story broke. Charity Star's troubled past raises questions. Chloe saw it before her morning coffee. Her breath caught. Her hands went cold. The article painted her as unfit, unreliable, someone who used hardship for personal gain. Photos of her old apartment, her overdue bills, even a court notice about Elijah's father abandoning them, all splashed across headlines. She sank to the floor, clutching her phone. When Derek burst into her office minutes later, her face said everything. "I didn't want this. I never asked for any of this." He knelt beside her, fury burning behind his calm eyes. "I know who did this, and I swear to you they'll regret it." But she shook her head. "Please don't fight for me. I can't be the reason you lose what you built." He took her hand. "You were the reason I remembered why I built it in the first place." That night, Chloe didn't go home. She walked for hours through the city, past glowing billboards and icy sidewalks, until her feet hurt. When she finally reached the same grocery store where it all began, she stopped. The aisles were quiet, the shelves nightly lined. A mother stood at the counter, fumbling for change, a baby crying softly in her arms. And just like before, Chloe stepped forward. "Here," she whispered, handing over a few bills. "Take it." The cashier blinked. "Ma'am, that's $20. "It's okay," Chloe said, smiling faintly. "It always comes around." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, forgiving, endless. Somewhere uptown, Derek Thompson was already preparing for war.
The boardroom was silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself knows a secret. Mr. Thompson stood at the head of the long mahogany table, his knuckles pale as he gripped the edge. The other executives avoided his gaze, pretending to study their papers, but everyone knew why they were there. The accusations, the whispers, the anonymous reports, all pointing to him. "You all know me," he said finally, his voice deep and steady. "I built this company from nothing. I've made mistakes, yes, but I will not be destroyed by lies." At the far end of the room, Mr. Carter, the head of finance, gave a cold smirk. "Then explain where the missing funds went, Richard. Because as of this morning, the accounts are empty." Murmurs rippled across the table. Cameras clicked. Someone was recording. Mr. Thompson looked around the room, and then, suddenly, his eyes caught something on the doorframe. A red scarf. Chloe's scarf, the same one she always wore when she worked late. His heart pounded. She had been there. She'd heard everything, and now she was gone. Down in the city streets, Chloe walked fast, her eyes brimming with tears. She didn't mean for any of this to happen. She had discovered the missing money by accident, but what she found scared her even more. Someone had been forging signatures, not Mr. Thompson's, but his son's. And the real culprit was closer than anyone knew. She reached for her phone, but it was dead. Behind her, a dark car slowed down. Its tinted window rolled halfway open. A man's voice said softly, "You shouldn't have looked where you didn't belong, Miss Chloe." She froze. And then headlights flared, a horn blared, and the car sped off into the night. Chloe ran toward the nearest bus stop, her heart racing. She knew she had to tell Mr. Thompson the truth before it was too late.
Rain poured hard that night, washing the city streets in silver streaks of light. Mr. Thompson sat alone in his car, engine off, hands trembling slightly as he stared at the steering wheel. His phone buzzed with dozens of messages, reporters, lawyers, even his own board demanding explanations, but he ignored them all. He had built his empire with precision and control, yet for the first time in decades, everything felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Then, through the sound of the rain, a faint knock echoed on his window. It was Chloe. She was drenched, shivering, clutching a crumpled folder to her chest. "You need to see this," she said, her voice breaking. He opened the door immediately, pulling her inside. Her lips trembled as she handed him the folder. Inside were printed transaction logs, signature verifications, and a video still from a security camera. The man caught in the frame wasn't Mr. Thompson. It was his son, Adrian. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered, "but he's been laundering the money through the subsidiary accounts. I think he wanted to take control of the company by framing you." Mr. Thompson's chest tightened. His son. His own blood. He turned away, staring through the rain-blurred windshield. "He was supposed to lead with integrity," he murmured, almost to himself. "He promised his mother he'd be better than me." Chloe reached out, her hand resting gently on his arm. "Sometimes people lose their way, but you still have the power to set it right." For a moment they sat in silence, two souls caught in the middle of a storm much bigger than themselves. Then Mr. Thompson took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and said quietly, "We're not going to the police yet. We'll give him a chance to tell the truth." The next morning, the Thompson Corporation building gleamed under the weak sunlight. Chloe waited in the lobby, nervous but resolute, as Mr. Thompson and his son entered the boardroom together. Adrian looked confident at first, until his father placed the folder on the table. "Would you like to explain this?" Mr. Thompson asked, voice steady but heavy. Adrian's smirk faltered. "You don't know what it's like to live under your shadow. Everyone worships you, the genius, the savior, the billionaire. You don't even see how small you make the rest of us feel." Mr. Thompson didn't answer. He just looked at his son with deep sadness. "You could have come to me," he said softly. "Instead, you tried to destroy everything, including the people who believed in me." Adrian's eyes flickered toward Chloe, who stood quietly near the door. "She's the one who found out?" he asked bitterly. "Yes," Mr. Thompson said, "and she's also the one who reminded me what real strength looks like." Adrian turned pale, his shoulders slumped. "What happens now?" "That depends on you," Mr. Thompson replied. "You can come clean, or watch the truth destroy you."